네, 다음번 이제 발표해 주실 분은 미국 캘리포니아 수소산업협회의 빌 엘릭 부회장님께서 미국과 캘리포니아의 수소와 수소전기차의 상용화 추진 방향을 주제로 온라인으로 발표해 주시겠습니다. 준비되면은 바로 시작하도록 하겠습니다.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm very pleased to be able to cover California primarily as the initial market in the U.S., but also talk a little bit about some of the other activities we have nationally. Okay, here we go. So to start with, California, the market is open and real today. It is new. But I like to point out that the market here is a little different than most of the others in that it's driven by consumers, not fleets. These are real people spending their own money and using these vehicles in their daily lives. Today we have over 8,000 fuel cell vehicles on the road. I believe that is more than anywhere else in the world. And they're supported by 41 public retail stations. We also have nearly 50 hydrogen buses in operation. Many of those have been in operation for over a decade. And the very first fuel cell trucks are now going into the service. So for us, we're very excited to report that our retail market has launched and that we've been ramping up that rollout. Now, let me focus a little bit at the beginning on the light-duty fuel cell vehicle market. We've had a really steady progress since the first hydrogen stations and vehicles were rolled out about 5 years ago. It started a little slower than we wanted to, but you can see here at that time, this is a graph showing the average kilograms per day dispensed in different regions of California. It's been a constant upward trend in demand. So clearly this technology is meeting more and more customers' need, and I can report back that many of our stations, a good number of them, are actually at maximum capacity where they'll run out of fuel each day. And so some of our markets are really stressed by not enough stations and a lot of high demand. So to show that demand another way, you can see the growth of the fuel cell vehicles here in the blue bar charts. And along with that, the blue line shows the station openings. So momentum there has been great. It's been steady and growing. However, if you look at the orange line, these are the stations in the queue coming up next. And we have not enough in the queue, quite frankly. So in California, one of our primary activities right now is building this network up to create more and bigger, more capable stations in order to make the market. So early on, we outlined a need for a minimum network of stations to get the technology rolled out and successful. We actually went ahead and launched the market with many fewer stations than we anticipated, well short of our first 100 station goal. However, we have a few things in development that goal and then the next, which is 200 stations by 2025, might be within reach. There is a program here called the Low Carbon Fuel Standard, which has a new amendment, which is helping to fund new and bigger stations, as well as a state funding program that we're awaiting for an announcement later this month that we hope will put many more stations into the queue, both this year and really creates a bit more momentum, confidence, and private investment for coming up next. But our real target is a sustainable market. Last year, we published something we called the California Fuel Cell Revolution, and it's our vision of what a sustainable market looks like. This really represents a tipping point, which summed up very simply is when we can reach 1,000 hydrogen stations and 1 million fuel cell vehicles, and we'd like to do that by 2030, we can at that point create a sustainable market where the vehicles, the fuels, the network of stations really are competitive with the conventional fuels. So we're putting all of our efforts now into this bigger goal to ramp up the market. And what this is really built on is more consumer demand, which is the underpinning of a real sustainable market. For us to move past these early adopters, which are great to have and it's very exciting, but we need to get into the majority of customers. And for them, the value proposition has to be one where the vehicle cost, the performance, the fuel cost, and availability is all equal to or even better than conventional fuels. And until that happens, we really don't have what we'd call a sustainable marketplace. And that's what this vision was really set out to do, was to figure out when and how we achieve that. And that's where we're spending our time now. So going now to some of the heavier markets, the heavy duty markets, as I said, we've had fuel cell buses on the road in everyday service for almost 20 years. They've gone millions of miles, incredible proving out of the technology. And what's really exciting is that the technology is nearly cost competitive with conventional fuels. Now, we've always been driven in this state by the light duty zero emission vehicle mandate for passenger vehicles. But last year, there was a new regulation put for transit agencies to have a similar 100% zero emission vehicle target by 2029. We anticipate this will drive a great deal of demand, and transit agencies across the state are now working on those plans. And that can be batteries or fuel cells. But we know in a large state like ours, and a lot of the terrain that we have, that there's a great opportunity here for this proven technology in the demonstration phase to reach that full commercial success. So we also know we can build upon our light duty lessons and experience to help this move along. And just this week, I'd like to announce, or excuse me, last week, that we actually as a state passed a new target for fuel cell, or I'm sorry, zero emission trucks. And that's the first of many heavy duty regulations we expect to come across different heavy duty truck, drayage, cargo, and other applications. But the state is clearly putting zero emissions as its mainstay. And this new regulation, again, just passed, starts requiring these trucks by 2024. And we anticipate learning from light duty, from the bus market, that while these trucks are just starting to roll out, we'll be able to move a bit faster than we did in these early markets. So it's really exciting seeing that we have trucks, cars, and buses all on the same trajectory. Now, we're working at the California Fuel Cell Partnership on a new roadmap for the trucks now, which is really a strategy of how to ramp this up to its own sustainable market. And I'm hoping we'll be able to put that out later this year for you all. And other parts of the United States are also starting to pick up the technology. We have a dozen stations throughout the Northeast, which is our most populous part of region of the country. Dozen stations, and they're just starting to open up there. We're seeing hydrogen being sought out for power generation and storage, with some of the heavy renewable generation going on in the Northwest. And just earlier this year, the first roadmap to a US hydrogen economy was published by over a dozen industry stakeholders. And this outlines how big this market can be for the US, gives our leaders targets and strategies for rolling this out, not just in transportation, which where we focus on, but in other markets as well. So it's really an exciting thing to see some of the success from California and around the world starting to be picked up across the United States. So looking ahead, we'll always continue to work on our education and awareness. We know that's a really big part of our success. We're going to continue to work on the rollouts for light and heavy duty markets and really establish those heavy duty markets and see their success. But the biggest task we're working on right now is around the right policy environment that encourages the private investment that will scale up this market. That's how we're going to achieve our 2030 vision. That's how we bring costs down and get the technology into people's hands so that that value I spoke about for the consumer is there. And it's there as a fuel, as a vehicle, and as a network, and really a transportation system that not just meets their needs, but really exceeds it with a zero emission technology. And we're also starting to look at hydrogen as an energy vector and where this can really leverage transportation, power, storage, and all the exciting things. Some of them have been talked about already today. And so as we have our successes, we want to share them with you. So I really want to thank you for this opportunity and to be able to hear from some of you and learn more what you're doing, because globally we're all going this direction and we all are taking slightly different approaches, and I think there's a lot to learn from each other. So my last slide here is just a really quick note for those who don't know what the Fuelcell partnership is. It's a public-private collaboration, which is rather unique here in the US, to have government and industry sit down together collaboratively and work together towards these common goals and overcome the challenges in a way that works for government, for industry, and most importantly for the consumers and the purchasers of these vehicles and fuels. So we're now working on expanding our organization to reach outside of California, and I look forward to later this year being able to announce something new and report to all of you sometime soon, probably this fall. And with that, I just want to again thank you and take any questions you might have.
Yes, thank you for nice presentation. 질의응답 질문 있으시면 해주시죠. 네, 저쪽에 한 분 계시네요.
캘리포니아 같은 경우에는 그 수소 생산의 소스를 어떤 식으로 지금 운영이 되고 있는지 좀 궁금합니다.
In California and the U.S., the majority of the production is from natural gas, and I think it was mentioned earlier by Mark Kirby that one of the strengths of hydrogen is the diversity of what you can do with it. California is a very aggressive environmental state, and so while that is the current standing, there's aggressive moves right now to move towards renewable sources. In the state, all the fuel that I explained to you is 33% renewable or more. I think we're averaging a little higher than that. And the regulations I spoke to, most of them are already starting to tip that number up to 40%. So we're aggressively trying to green that pathway right along, and we think we can actually do it quicker than the grid, and we think those two will work together. But for right now, we are primarily natural gas driven.
네, 감사합니다. 미국은 지금 규정상 사용하는 수소의 3분의 1은 그린 수소로 사용하도록 되어 있습니다. 혹시 질문 있으시면 하나 정도만 받도록 하겠습니다. 예, 없으시면 있으신가요? 그 캘리포니아 퓨얼셀 파트너십은 사실 미국의 그 수소 및 연료전지 산업을 선도하고 있고요. 지금 미국에서 사실 이 수소전기차 보급이나 연료전지 보급이 가장 활발한 주가 캘리포니아입니다. 거의 대부분이 캘리포니아에 집중되어 있고 다른 지역을 선도하고 있습니다. 캘리포니아의 수소모빌리티 및 수소충전 현황에 대해서 자세히 발표해 주셨고요. 이것으로 이제 세 번째 연사는 이제 발표를 마치고 다음번 발표로 넘어가도록 하겠습니다. 다음번 발표해 주실 분은 캐나다의 하이드로제닉스사의 앨런 레이즈 이사님께서 연료전지를 활용한 수소에너지 저장 및 모빌리티 적용 사례를 주제로 온라인으로 발표해 주시겠습니다. 준비가 되면 바로 시작하도록 하겠습니다.